Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. My name is Jay Schmelzer. I'm one of the directors of program management on the Visual Studio team at Microsoft. I have the privilege of leading the program management team that's responsible for a lot of the experience of .NET developers. So everything starting from the common language runtime through the core framework, the managed programming languages, VB, C#, F#, and up into the actual Visual Studio experience for folks building solutions targeting Azure, Office, and SharePoint, and so forth. It is an amazing time to be a developer. I think Bill Staples this morning said it well during the keynote. It's an amazing time to be a cloud developer. I'm going to argue with him, though. I think it's an amazing time to be a .NET developer. Yeah? Over the last 2 days, you heard us make numerous announcements of new capabilities, new functionality, and new innovations in .NET, both at the core of the runtime, in the programming languages, as well as out into the experiences for building modern apps. What I'm going to try to do here over the next 60 minutes is give you a complete picture of everything that we've done and everything we've talked about over those two keynotes today, doing that next level of double-click into it a little bit. And you know what? I'll probably throw a couple announcements in as well, things that we didn't have a chance to amplify even during the keynotes, because we just have so much cool stuff going on. So to get started, when we think about our role inside of the Visual Studio team, inside of the developer tools team, we really think about the fact that we are providing, first and foremost, the best development experience when you are using our platforms, be that Azure, Windows Server, our development platforms, predominantly .NET, and using our best-in-class, world's greatest development environment, Visual Studio. But as Satya mentioned during his Q&A yesterday, and as Scott talked about today, and you saw multiple times throughout the keynote, we know it's a heterogeneous environment out there. We know you need to work with multiple different platforms, multiple different device types. You need to use multiple different development technologies. And a lot of times, you need to use multiple different IDE experiences. So we are making a very conscious effort to ensure that across our developer stack, we are approaching it in a way that is open, that can be easily integrated, and can easily take advantage of all of those different technologies that you need to be able to weave your way through to get your job done. That is one of the things that is really driving us, and one of the big changes I think you've hopefully acknowledged and recognized over the course of these 2 days so far, and that you will see from us going forward. So I said I want to go and spend some time and kind of look at a lot of these announcements and sort of just from the .NET developer's point of view. So we're going to do that. I'm also going to try to give you a little bit of a sense of where we're going in the future. Right? I'm not going to try to lay out a complete roadmap for you. We're very agile. We are making changes based on your feedback and those kind of things. But hopefully, through the course of this hour, you'll be able to get a sense of the places we're putting investments, how to interact with us, and help us get feedback so you can go and influence those plans as well. But before we jump in too far, let's talk a little bit about why I'm so excited about the .NET developer ecosystem, why I think it's a great time to be a .NET developer. First of all, .NET itself is installed on over 1.8 billion machines. And that's only counting machines that have acquired that through the Windows Update mechanism. So this means machines that are actively being used, actively pulling updates, and actively staying up to date on the latest versions of .NET across all the platforms we support it on. That's an amazing number. It's an amazing number of people and machines that you can reach with your software. If we expand that and look at all of the other different types of devices and form factors that .NET runs on, from embedded systems all the way up through the highest end services, that number just continues to grow and get bigger and bigger. If we think specifically about the developers and people, you writing code, and we look just at professional developers, there are about 6 million professional developers using .NET to accomplish their daily tasks and develop their applications. If I take and look beyond professional developers, so look at people that are writing code, building applications, but it's not their air quotes day job. They're doing it as either because they're in an industry like research or science, and they're building apps to help them with their accomplish their work. Hobbyists, folks doing software development kind of for fun or in the evenings kind of as a moonlighter, this number just continues to grow. That's an awesome opportunity. That's an awesome base upon which we, as a developer ecosystem, can collaborate, work together, and do just amazing things. One of the great parts of my job is I have the opportunity to go out and interact with lots and lots of developers around the world. And I've had the opportunity to do this for a number of years now. I've been at Microsoft for a little over 11 years, spent 10 years prior to that as a customer of Microsoft's development technologies, building custom software. And one of the things that we've heard, and I've heard loud and clear over the last couple of years, is that there are really 5 key things that are really on your mind. First of all, this notion that every company is becoming a software company. Right? The rate at which businesses need to evolve in order to stay relevant, they need software that can help them take advantage of new opportunities, realize new engagement models with their customers, jump on new business opportunities. Those applications that you're being asked to write, they've got a completely new set of experiences that people expect of them. The classic business application, the one that you saw Harry show in the keynote on yesterday morning, right? The Battleship gray grid application that was only ever going to be used by internal employees, and they would grumble at you, but you're like, so what? You have to use it. It's okay. Those days are gone, right? You're now being expected to build applications that are actually a way to interact directly with your end customer. Even your internal business users are demanding richer experiences of the applications you develop. And they're demanding to be able to use them on multiple different devices and multiple different form factors. So cross-device, cross-platform development is something you're having to work into your development strategy. I mentioned businesses are changing. You're being asked to go and meet those needs and do that development in a much faster rate than ever before. Right? You're being asked to build these new, rich experiences on different devices using different technologies and do it quicker, do it more agilely, release more often. Oftentimes, even getting into the point of having just continuous release cycles where you're always pushing innovations into your production environment. In addition to trends that have happened across sort of the business environment that are driving us, we're also seeing some trends in the technology space as well. Right? Things like open source are a great way for us as a developer community to be able to help each other meet those needs, address fast rising trends, and we're seeing organizations are coming to get comfortable with the idea of leveraging open source as part of their development strategy, and we are as well. And finally, one of the things that every developer I talk to is very quick to remind me of is that, hey, this is great. All these new things are awesome. I can't wait to go, get some new skills, develop some new kinds of apps. It's really exciting to, always want to be learning stuff. But I've also got apps that are in production today that I need to continue operating, I need to continue maintaining, I need to enhance, and I need to think about how I evolve those forward into these new worlds and these new experiences. So I'm seeing some nods as I'm talking to you guys about that. It seems like these points are resonating. So that's what's driving us. These are the 5 things that are really core to the motivations behind how we're thinking about our approach to .NET and the .NET developer experience going forward. Now I should pause here, and I do want to say we've got this nice room, completely packed. It's awesome to see developers having to sit next to each other. I know it's a little awkward. We like our space, but I appreciate everybody doing that. I will say, let's have just a couple simple ground rules for the rest of the session. First, try to hold your questions till the end. We'll try to save some time. If not, stick around for a while. Second, if you hear something or see something or I show something that you think is interesting, it is absolutely okay to applaud. It's okay to cheer. It's okay to yell. My team is back in Redmond watching this on the stream. The louder you are, the more the opportunity they're actually going to have to hear how excited you are about the things we've been doing. The only thing I'll ask is please don't throw sharp objects at me. It makes the rest of the presentation a little bit boring if I'm up here bleeding. Okay, so those things, how do we think about this stuff? How is it influencing us? What is our new approach? Well, we've heard loud and clear that you want us, you want to see innovation in .NET. You want to know that Microsoft is investing in .NET. Hopefully, after those two keynotes this week, you've already got a sense that we are absolutely investing in .NET, but I'm going to try to help you get even more awareness to that and more understanding of what we're actually doing. We're absolutely doing that. We're absolutely continuing to innovate. This is a strategic asset to us. It's a strategic part of our overall developer story. The agility that you need us to be able to go, and you need to be able to get access to the latest and greatest technologies, components, and frameworks that will help you build the kinds of applications you're looking for. We have a great set of technologies through our NuGet package management solution. We'll absolutely leverage that as a core ability to allow you to quickly incorporate new capabilities, new components into your solutions in a very safe and trusted way. And finally, openness. I would say it's safe to assume, and I know based on some folks and comments I've seen on Twitter this morning, that we blew some people's minds this morning with the level of openness that we are starting to go for in terms of embracing open source as a way of life inside of Microsoft. I can say in the .NET part of development, it is the starting point for anything we're doing. If we aren't thinking about starting as an open source effort, it's probably not going to happen. That's the first question any of my teams will get these days is, why is that? Where's the repo? Where's the public repo for what we're doing? Why is it not open? Right? That is the way we will be operating. This is the way we'll be working going forward. OK, what I tried to do here is capture a little bit of, kind of call this the mall map of what we've been talking about this week and what we will talk about this week. What it's trying to do is just give you a visual to represent the fact that we are investing across the full .NET developer stack. And I'm going to drill into each one of these in a little bit of detail throughout the rest of this presentation. But just at a high level, it starts at the core. It starts with things like the runtime and new innovations we're doing in there that apply to every .NET application. We'll talk a little about the new .NET JIT compilers, codenamed Ryujit, that for everyone, every application is going to give you increased performance without you doing anything. That's core investment. We've talked this morning about Roslyn, Project Roslyn, the new .NET compiler platform. We'll talk about that some more during this session. Again, something for every .NET developer immediately makes your experience better as part of the way you build software. When we move up and we start thinking about the different types of applications, continuing to invest across all of those. You saw a lot this morning in the keynote about the investments we're making around Azure and Windows Server. The thing to think about there is every time we stand up one of these new services in Azure, there is a library, there is a programming interface for .NET developers to interact with those services and take advantage of them in their applications. They can't go out without that. The desktop, you saw yesterday morning in the keynote, some investments we're making there to help you bring those desktop business assets forward and start leveraging them as you move into new modern device form factors, modern app styles through things like the brokered service and so forth. Store apps, universal app projects, those kinds of things, really making it easy for you to build a rich experience across all of the different Windows device form factors. And of course, going cross-platform through our partnership with the folks at Xamarin, being able to use C# and .NET and build native iOS and Android apps. Also thinking about openness, right? So how do we go and really foster this vibrant open source community around what we're doing in .NET? OK, I can see lunch is starting to kick in, so we're going to start getting into some next level of details here. Let's start breaking some of these things apart. Let's start down in the runtime. Just the other day, we released the third preview of our new next-generation JIT compiler that we refer to by the codename of Ryujit. At the core, the thing that this is going to do for you is actually just really give you, out-of-the-box, application startup and performance improvements. There's a lot of things it gives us internally as far as our ability to innovate faster and do some interesting things on top of it that will benefit you. But at the beginning, that's the thing it does. That preview is out today. You can go to grab it and start working with it. As part of that preview, we're introducing SIMD support. Now, that usually gets an applause point. Yeah? All right, we're going to have to do something interesting to get the lunch factor working. But what this does, for those of you that are familiar, this is an incredible set of technologies that really in places like heavy graphics, games development is groundbreaking in terms of what it can allow you to do and the kind of performance benefits you can get. We will, by the time this is complete, support multiple different hardware architectures. So you will see anywhere from 4x to 8x improvements when you take advantage of these kinds of technologies. For those of you that are thinking about, what is SIMD, what does it mean? I mean, if you think about the idea of scaling and massive scale, and today the way we do that is through parallelization and multitasks and threading and tasks and stuff like that. And you think, okay, well, that should be enough, right? Well, what that approach is really doing is allowing us to scale over many cores efficiently, right? What SIMD allows us to do is actually scale over a single core. So it's hardware technology that allows us to go and do parallel type operations on a single core. Truly amazing stuff. Later today, Habib from my team will be doing another kind of drill down into a lot of the work we're doing in the runtime. He'll show you some demos of what this new JIT compiler and our SIMD support can do, and both in terms of demos of how it affects applications, but also how you can program against it. Also down at the core, we have something the team is really excited about. We've been working on this for quite a while, and it's our new .NET compiler platform that we affectionately refer to as Project Roslyn. Andrew's talked about this morning, but if you think about it, one of the biggest motivations we had here was to take the rich knowledge that the compiler has about your application, about your code, and expose it out to the rest of the developer ecosystem, developer tooling experience, allowing us to build richer experiences on top of that knowledge rather than keeping it just all to ourselves. So we kind of think of it as we've opened the box. We've opened the black box that was the compiler, created a set of APIs that expose this information out for use in other scenarios. Now, one of the interesting things, the team's been working on this for quite a while. I won't tell you how many years ago the project actually started within the team, but we went back and we looked at the OneNote that we'd been using to keep track of all the design meetings. And we found in the very first meeting, the very first day when we outlined a set of principles, one of the principles that we had for this project was to open source. So a good 3 or 4 years ago, when we started this, we started with that as a core principle, in addition to the value we wanted to add as a result of creating this. So this preview, publicly available today. You can go out and get it. It's a simple Visual Studio extension. It just installs the V6 into your existing Visual Studio 2013 environment, and we'll switch the compilers for you, and you'll now be running with the new Roslyn compilers and some previews of the new language experiences and developer experiences that we're working on and thinking about. You can use it, test it, give us feedback on it. I'll admit, this is a little bit of a scary thing. I use the open heart surgery analogy a lot with the team. We just took a major organ out of Visual Studio and replaced it with a new one. So we definitely need your help running code through it, helping us understand where we may have missed some things. When I think about what it means for the developer ecosystem, it really falls into three primary buckets. First, every .NET developer using Visual Studio will see rich new experiences as a result of the things we can do on top of this compiler infrastructure, that we and the ecosystem can do on top of this. I'll show you a little bit of that in a demo here in a minute. Because the API surface is there, we now have the ability to share the knowledge of the compiler, the intimate knowledge the compiler has of your code, with the ecosystem of folks building tools and extensions that help you be more productive. And we took a really special care in this API set because we didn't want it to be sort of the realm of the highest end computer scientists to be able to figure out how to build great experiences on top of the compiler. We wanted anybody that had an idea, that had a thought about how they could make developers either in the wild or just developers on their own team write better code, build better software. So we wanted to create an API set that allowed any of us to go and build custom experiences. We call them diagnostics, experiences that can plug into the environment. And we also wanted to do that in a way that could work even outside of the IDE toolchain. So I'll show you a demo of some things we've done where we take advantage of this compiler platform to create a rich experience just on the web. And finally, of course, the way to do this and the way to make it best was, as developers, We all have our feelings about the quality of documentation that gets produced. The best documentation is always the code itself, right? And so what better way to enable you to build these kinds of experiences than to give you complete access to that source code so you can go and understand exactly what's going on. OK, we've gone quite a bit, and we haven't actually looked at anything interesting code-wise yet, so let's fix that. So let me switch over to my laptop here. And the first thing we do is let's take a look at some of the things that Roslyn allows us to do. This morning in the keynote, Anders kind of showed you number 1 and number 3 of those scenarios, right? He showed you some experiences we could do inside of the development environment that are richer, like renames and finding unused code or unused imports, those kinds of things. And then he showed you the open source aspect of being able to go in and actually explore and experiment with language capabilities yourself as a developer with our code base. Let's take a look at the middle one, the idea of being able to build an extension or diagnostic that does some interesting stuff. So what I've got here is I've got a little, asked my team, hey, what's a good demo app we have? And it turns out one of my teammates, Dustin, apparently needs something to do when he's on a long flight to Europe. So what else would you do on a flight to Europe but build a Z-Machine interpreter and VM, right? Like that's totally makes sense. That's what you're going to do on a flight to Europe, right? So that's what he did. If you looked at the project structure, you see he decided to go and spread it across all 3 languages. So he's got the core interpreter in VM written in F#, his unit tester in Visual Basic, and his WPF client here is written in C#. And so he created a few scripts for it so we could go and we could play some old throwback to our youth kind of games, like play a little game of Zork here. We could, of course, do the thing that none of us really have time to play the whole game, so we can just actually instead take a script and let it automate the game for us and win. OK, so the actual app isn't important. But what I wanted was something that was sort of meaty and had a lot of code in it to show off some of these capabilities. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of cruising through Dustin's code here. And it's like, he does a pretty good job of making it basically readable. He's apparently not a fan of comments, but that's OK. But then I get down and I see something like this area right here, right? I don't know about all of you, but this is one of kind of my pet peeves. We'd agreed. Dustin's in the audience, by the way. I won't tell you where he is. We'd agreed as a team that we were never going to do this, that we didn't like the idea of not putting braces around even simple single-line embedded statements in if-else blocks. You read the code and you're actually looking at it and you're like, oh, it doesn't do what I think it does, right? Like this doesn't actually do what you think it does by just looking at it. Now we could go and use some capabilities like edit, advanced, and use the format document. OK, that helped. That made it look a little better. But what if we really wanted to go and implement a custom diagnostic for our team that would help us catch when we're making these little shortcuts or violating our style guidelines as a team? Well, since we have Roslyn, what we can do is we can create one of those kind of extensions. So I've already installed it. What I'm going to do is just enable it. We have this stylish code extension. It's going to cause Visual Studio restart. Nah, we won't save it. We'll just let it come back up. The extension will enable Visual Studio reload, take us right back to that same place we were in the source file. And this time, if I sit here for a moment, what we should see is we're suddenly getting squiggles under each of these places where we have if-else statements that have an embedded single statement without a bracket. I just press Control dot, and we get a code fix suggestion right there for us to actually go and address that. We can hit Enter, and we can apply that fix. So in case you missed it, we're just applying those fixes right as part of that custom diagnostic. Now, later today, when Dustin and Mads talk, Dustin's going to actually take you through building that custom diagnostic and show you exactly how it was done. And it really isn't that scary. And you can make fun of Dustin or give him suggestions on things to do on his flights to Europe next time, or ask him for the game. So that's a little bit of an example of what we can do inside the development environment. But what about leveraging this compiler platform outside of the Visual Studio IDE? A few weeks ago, we released an updated experience for browsing and interacting with the .NET reference source. If you haven't seen it, referencesource.microsoft.com, you can go out there and you can browse through all of the source for the framework. Well, what we can do here is go in and we can start searching for things, and we can look for something like the task class. Now, we've got a little network latency here, but what you see is we're going through and we're navigating directly into that class. And we have a couple different experiences over here on the right. So if I go over, I can switch these things around, and rather than looking at it as that view, we could look at it in more of a traditional project structure. We could explore via namespace view. So that's interesting. We explore as kind of an outline type of view. But also, as we're working through here and looking at this stuff, we can look through and say, oh, a task schedule, I wonder what that is. Well, we get this clickable, navigable, semantic graph of all of the source code, all powered by the intelligence of the underlying .NET compiler platform APIs, but running in just a server environment. So now imagine the places you can go with this and the kinds of things we can do around richer, deeper code analysis, both in the environment, but also in environments that don't have a Visual Studio experience like build servers and so forth, or just source browsing experiences like this. I think it's pretty cool and a lot of interesting power that we have available to us. OK, so that's just a really little bit about kind of the .NET compiler platform. As I say, this afternoon, those guys will go through it a lot more tomorrow morning or whenever their talk is. Let's spend a minute and talk about the other big thing that, for us, came out this morning, and that is the creation of a new .NET Foundation to foster open source development around .NET and the .NET ecosystem. If you go out to the website, you will see that we are very early in creating this foundation. And that's by design. That's intentional. What we are looking to do here is create a foundation that can really go and enable commercial and community folks to engage in open source software development around .NET, creating this ecosystem that really helps us develop the kinds of things we need, get them available, get them out there to folks. We've got a number of folks we've been talking to, a number of folks that are active in the open source community around that. They're kind of really they're acting as early advisors to us at this point, and giving us insight into what are the challenges their projects have faced. What are things we as a foundation could do to make it easier for them to be successful? Some of these, like the folks from, I'll pick on Umbraco is a great example. I happened to have a conversation with them a couple weeks ago. I'd say they've kind of broken through and really are successful at this point. But so going back to what would you have wanted in the early days? What would have been the things that would have helped you get there faster? One of the things I think is unique about what we're doing here with the .NET Foundation is, some of you may say, hey, you've done this before. This is, I think, going to be different. Yes, this is an independent foundation, but it is one that Microsoft is going to be very active and a very active participant in. We're not going to be shy about the fact that we care deeply about what's going on in this foundation. We're putting core .NET platform assets into the foundation. So what you see here is a list of things that are kind of on day one been contributed to the foundation. All of the work we've been doing around the ASP.NET web stack in the open community, that's all going in. The new .NET compiler platform, the Roslyn project, that's going in. And we've also already got our partners from Xamarin bringing in a couple of projects. And that's just the day one folks. We have lots of interest already. And those of you that have open source projects and are interested in talking to us and engaging with us on what this can be, please connect with us. We'd love to talk to you about what you see as an opportunity here. And let's also be really clear. We've got a little bit of a stigma sometimes around what Microsoft does with open source projects, right? That is not the case. That is not what we do. We took core pieces, the compilers, right? That is something that we actively develop in. We have Microsoft developers will continue to actively be working on those projects in the open as part of this effort. So I think it's pretty exciting. OK, so that's the core. Let's kind of start moving out from the core a little bit and talk a little bit more about the kinds of specific applications that people are working on and things that are going on there. When I think about sort of the world of the .NET developer and the kinds of things we do, we have the core set of business applications that we've been working on forever. We're now starting to see that we need to go and expand those and evolve them into these modern applications, right? These modern interaction models, modern form factors, modern touch, those kinds of things. We also need to go and take them cross-device. So we need to go and create experiences for being able to leverage as much of our assets as possible as we're building our software and reuse it, regardless of whether we're running on Windows devices, iOS devices, or Android devices. And finally, thinking about the cloud. The idea of a mobile-first, cloud-first kind of experience, the fact that mobile, cloud is what drives mobile. What interesting device apps do you have that don't have cloud backends? How do we go and create experiences there and create the tools that you need to successfully build these kinds of applications in the timelines that you're being asked to deliver on? So if we tear this apart a little bit and think about the things that we've talked about already this week and announced, and first start looking at the cloud, web, and the services space, there's a couple key things that I think start popping out. First, the ability to go and create Azure Mobile Services, Azure Mobile Service backends using .NET. We can now go and carry forward the same skills, the same .NET programming skills, same .NET experiences that we are used to into these mobile device experiences, mobile service backend experiences. Yesterday afternoon in this room, Scott and Scott did the Scott and Scott show and showed a bunch of cool stuff that we've been doing inside of ASP.NET as part of this recent update. Personal favorites of mine, I think the browser link stuff is absolutely amazing. The web jobs are cool. But there's lots and lots of interesting stuff there. I won't go into too much detail. If you didn't see it, I highly recommend you spend an hour. The hour goes by way faster than any hour of your life. They're entertaining and informative at the same time. But another thing that we've done, and this gets in the category of, well, we didn't make a lot of noise about it, but we have started talking about it, is a new set of, a first preview of some technology we've been working on for a while to really help developers successfully build large-scale cloud services. And this is something we refer to as Project Orleans. First public preview is out now. There was a great session, I believe it was yesterday afternoon, by the team that builds the back-end, a lot of the back-end services that power your Halo experiences, who have built that on top of Orleans. If you didn't see it, I highly encourage you to check it out. They were a big motivation in us really deciding we needed to bring this thing forward. We need to bring this out and get more folks exposed to it so you can get an idea of what is possible here and give us feedback on the uses of this technology. The idea behind Orleans was really to go and address a lot of the core problems and core challenges developers face when they're building large-scale services. Look, I told you my history. I've been in the development world for a little over 20 years. Went through all the different names of application architecture patterns you can imagine. Anybody remember Windows DNA? But in the end, if I take a step back, they're really fairly similar. They were all kind of just steps down the path of these service-oriented architectures, right? There was no big, monumental, transformative leap there. They were incremental improvements on the prior pattern. What we're seeing with large-scale cloud services is that you do need to think differently. The ones that are truly scaling massively have to think differently about the way they do these things. And they're dealing with massive, parallelization, massive scale and those kinds of things. And all of those other architectures had choke points in them. They had a database backend choke point that then caused us, we'll create a caching pattern in front of that, right? So we don't, all those kinds of stuff, all that kinds of complexity. What Orleans attempts to do is look at some of those common problems and then apply a programming model that is familiar to .NET developers on top of it and take a lot of that complexity away. So it does things like allow you to write code that is not dealing with threading and things like that, just sort of single thread. And then they take care of the threading for you. They allow you to deal things with state management, location awareness, moving in and out and scale up and scale down without you having to write the code. You just sort of design your system, program it against using standard .NET techniques, async, await, those kinds of things and tasks, and the Orleans infrastructure takes care of the rest of it for you. Again, We don't think there's necessarily a silver bullet to this problem, but we think there probably are potentially a set of patterns or set of common situations that we can go and put a higher level programming experience on top of. And Orleans is an experience, a preview for seeing if we have something there. So this is one, if you're thinking about and getting into these larger scale services, highly recommend you check it out. Definitely looking for a lot of feedback on this one, and really want to know kind of what you think and what your experiences are. And definitely go check out the Halo guys talk. It's pretty cool. So that's on the service side. When we look at the device side, a couple big things we've done here. First, you saw yesterday the concept of a universal app project, the ability to go and have more of a first-class experience inside of Visual Studio for building and managing an application that needs to be present and needs to have experiences across multiple different device form factors. So you saw how this works. I won't go into a lot of detail on it again. There's lots of talks on it here at Build this week. But really interesting, really powerful way of just kind of getting a more first-class experience into that. The thing I do want to spend some time on is what we refer to as .NET Native. This is another one of those that didn't get a marquee spot in a keynote, but is a new thing we're doing. Just actually yesterday, we released a preview of this that you can include and download and use as part of your development experience to try it out. But you actually saw this if you saw the Visual Studio 2013 launch back in October. Those of you that saw that, you saw a demo where we showed 2 instances of Fresh Paint, right, running on a Surface RT, and one of them loaded, well, the second time when he didn't false start, one of them loaded significantly faster than the other one. The technology behind that was .NET Native. What we've done is we've taken and we've included, basically, the easiest way to think about it is we've included the backend C++ compiler into your .NET compilation toolchain. So now you compile your C# code to IL, and then we take that IL and compile it into native code. So you are running using the same C++ compiler that you would use from C++, but you're still getting the productivity experiences that you come to expect using C# and .NET. Thank you. Good to see you guys are awake. So the preview is out today. The long-term vision for this, right, is that this will be something that will take advantage of compilation in the cloud. Those of you that know the details, we do something that was on the path to this today for phone apps, for Windows Phone store apps, where you submit your IL, and actually there's a next-level compilation process that happens in the store before it comes down to the phone, and it kind of eliminates NGen and stuff like that. This goes the next step beyond that. All the NGen, those things are just out of the picture now because you are a native compiled app. So for the experience that we're giving you as part of the Visual Studio toolchain, you'll go and you'll see me use it here in a minute, you'll have to start specifying things that you never did as a .NET developer before, like processor architecture, right? Because you got to compile for each one of them. Eventually, that goes away. You'll keep going and submitting IL to the store. We'll do that for you in the back end, but give you that experience in case you need to go and debug and try things locally. Early preview of this, there are going to be some hiccups. Only supports store apps right now, and only ARM and x64 in this preview. That is not the end state. That's just where we are with the preview. But I encourage you to go and check it out. And to motivate you to do that a little bit, let's switch over and take a look at a couple of these things. So first I should switch. OK, we don't need to play that Zork anymore. Let's start with the mobile services piece. So here I'm inside of Visual Studio 2013. I've got the latest update. And what we've added is if I go in and create a new project, and under the web space, and I go in and create an ASP.NET project, you'll see that one of the things that's now there is an Azure Mobile Service project. So we can use .NET to create our Azure Mobile Service APIs and backends. So I've already gone ahead and done that. So let's just go cancel out of this one and switch over. And we'll switch to our server project. And what you see here is I've got just a .NET Mobile Service project. It's going to look familiar. It's basically just a web API project. If I go in and I look at my controllers, you'll see I have a message controller. When I open this up, you see that, there it is. It's just deriving from a special API controller class that is what surfaces the mobile service capabilities. And then I can go in and I can implement my code, whether it's, dealing with the verbs of a web API, whether it's very custom APIs that I want to expose as my web API. All that flexibility is there, just as if I was building a web API. Of course, I get to do this using all of my familiar .NET skills, all of the experiences I have inside of Visual Studio that I'm used to as a .NET developer apply. And what's even, of course, I think even better is that also means that all of the rich libraries that I have available to me as a .NET developer are available to me in my .NET implemented mobile service backend. So in this case, I'm using Twilio because we can't do any kind of service demo, I guess, without giving you the opportunity to send us text messages. But we're using the Twilio API inside of our .NET mobile service backend. OK, so this is a pretty simple little application. What I've got also here is a client. And what I decided we would do, just to have a little fun, is I thought we'd implement a little kind of head-to-head match game, where basically we can pick two competitors and have them do a little head-to-head battle based on votes. So we would go and text votes, and whoever had the most votes would win. So that's what this client does, and it's using that mobile service backend to go and interact with that, and then it'll send a notification message when the battle is complete. So in order to do that, all I had to do was go in and I built my Windows Store project. And I went in and I used the connected service dialog to go and actually discover and hook up this client application to my .NET mobile service. So right now it's going out, it's querying Azure for my projects, and you see that I've got this head-to-head project. That's the one I added. When I pull that in, it spews a little bit of code and config for me to get wired up to it. So that's great. And one of the things we also did is because we wanted this to be just a natural experience for .NET developers, we built the kinds of tools that you would expect to have available to you around working with this. So for example, when I go into Server Explorer, I can expose and explore and see what mobile services I have, what notification hubs I have. In the case of a notification hub, I might want to make sure that this is completely hooked up correctly or see what's going on. So we created the ability to just send simple text messages. In this case, we can specify what style of message do we want, be it across the Windows devices or iOS and Android devices. In our case, we'll just do a simple toast. We could change this message to say whatever we want. So we'll say, oops. Say hello, build. Press send. And up in the right corner of the screen, you see we got that test message came back to my device. Right? So we know that this is the channel's kind of hooked up correctly. We can see the format of the messages as they go back, that go back and forth. So in case we needed to leverage that for building our device. The other thing, of course, we can do, if I switch back to the server project, I've already deployed this to Azure in my mobile service. But one of the things I can do is go in and let's say I'm having some challenges with this. And one of the things I want to do is just kind of attach the debugger to it. So this is deployed into Azure. And I'm going to go and do a remote debugger attach to that instance. So at this point, we're going off. We're talking to Azure. It's probably going to ask me to log in because it's timed out. Maybe it won't. And we're establishing a secure connection and getting that shared mobile service set up in a way that we can debug it and only it and not affect anybody else's stuff. So OK, we've got that hooked up. We've got a breakpoint set here. So let's go back into our client. Go away. Let's run this. What we're going to see is we got our little head-to-head game. So let's pick a challenger and a champion. Let's do something. Let's say we're developers, so we'll say Scott Gu is in the challenger position right now. We'll take a picture here. I like the Denitario moves. And let's see how Scott does against Chocolate. OK, so we've got our match set up. At this point, now, because I've done these kind of live demos in front of folks like you before, and you've let me down a little bit, I modified this one slightly. But what you can do is grab your phone if you want to play along, and get ready to send a text message to that number. Okay? If you want to vote for Scott, text 1 space, and you can give me a little message as part of that. If you want to vote for Chocolate, text 2, and you also, of course, can give a message. When I click Start Voting, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a 20-second capture of what everybody sends on the server, and then I'm going to send it back from the service. We'll get a little notification that we've got a winner. We'll send the data back, and I'll display a set of probably the first 5 or 6 comments on each side that show up should show up on the screen here. We try to put a little bad word detection in there, so depending on what you do, we'll see. So I don't know if that was a good idea or not to challenge you to try to figure out how to break that. But OK, everybody got your phones? We ready? Everybody that wants to play? OK, so we're going to start voting and start texting. And we're probably getting close to 20 seconds. Oh, no. So this wasn't the intended demo, but you see where we broke? We broke in the server. We broke in the cloud. We just had that's even better than the demo I planned. Well, let's just F5 and see what happens. Oh, yep, not going well. Bummer. All right, well, that's a bummer. But you get the idea. Oh, what the heck? No, we're not going to do it again. Nah, we're not going to do it again. You guys don't want to do it again, do you? Sure, why not? All right. Maybe it was Scott. Maybe Scott didn't like me. Wait, no, okay. It wasn't. Scott's powerful, but not that powerful yet. So, Scott. Scott against Chocolate. And we're just going to start right away. Let's see, one. And there was a tie. So that was mobile services. But wait, there is one thing we need to do, because no failed demo will be complete without continuing to try. So you get the idea. And yes, you now have experienced a classic Jay Schmelzer demo moment. They gotta have a failure in there. OK, so imagine that worked. It was awesome. Scott won. Those of you that voted for Chocolate, I do have your phone numbers. Just kidding. I didn't save those. But let's go and take this one step further. So this is just a store app written in C#. What's the experience like if I want to take this and take advantage of that new .NET native compilation experience, right? Can we do that? Well, turns out we can. So let's go. We'll just right-click over here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the properties. And I mentioned one of the things we got to do now, because we're thinking about a C++ compiler, is think about what do we want to compile to. So any CPU is not going to cut it anymore. So in this case, we'll go ahead and say, let's go target x64. Go back over to our project, say enable for .NET Native. And what this is going to do is it's going to run a little bit of, it's going to do a couple things. It's going to inject an XML file into our project that we'll look at real quick, but I won't go into a lot of detail. I'll let Habib do that later. But that basically is giving you the ability to give us some additional knowledge of the kinds of things you know you are using in your project. Again, it's a preview, so you got to help us a little bit right now. So if you're pulling in libraries and things like that that aren't part of the core .NET framework, you can still use them in this project experience, right? In this native compilation experience. You just have to let us know which things to go out and grab. That way, if you're still doing reflection and things like that, we have the metadata available for that to actually work when your app is running. What we see here is a little report that's going to tell us if we have any potential problems that we were able to detect right away from a static analysis scan. And assuming we don't, which in this case we don't, we could just go in here and execute a build. And what we will see is that our build is going to take longer. It's going to take longer because we just added the C++ compiler to the end of it. Anyway, that's it. It worked. We could run it, but then we'd see all the colossal failures again, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. OK, so that's the idea. Being able to go get the same developer experience using C# and .NET, but compile natively using the C++ backend compiler. I think that's pretty cool. Thank you. So, OK, we've talked a lot about services. We've talked about the cloud. We've talked about the Windows family of devices and how the improvements we're making there and investments we're making there. But what about this cross-platform aspect? No surprise, I think everybody in the room that has to deal with it has probably realized there's really basically two approaches you can take if you need a native app experience on a device. You can go for the HTML web-based approach, the HTML and JavaScript-based approach. That's going to get you the best experience in terms of reuse of your assets. It's going to get you as close as possible to a write it once, run it anywhere kind of experience, right? Because you can do things with adaptive UI and those kinds of experience. You can use tools like Cordova to get the native access to device-specific things. So that's great. But if you need to go that next level of getting as close as possible to the truly native experience, actually being almost right next to a natively built experience on iOS and Android, boy, it'd be great if I could go do that while maintaining my C# skills, using my C# ability, leveraging .NET. And that's what the partnership with Xamarin is all about. The ability to go and sit in Visual Studio, do development in C# and .NET, and still target iOS and Android devices, while allowing you to share as much of that code as possible. Yes, you're going to have to implement the UI each time, because we didn't create abstractions over those UI. You are writing native iOS UI code. You're writing native Android code. The Xamarin guys did a great job of creating a set of projections for those experiences that allow them to surface into your C# experience. So this is something that we've made. We started this partnership with them back in the fall. Couldn't be happier with the way this is going. We've been collaborating with them a lot. I'm not going to go and show it to you here today because, well, the man himself is in the building. Miguel is here. I think he's doing a session right after this, I believe. So if you want to learn more about it, I'm sure he will tell you a lot, and it will be entertaining. But we think it's a great technology and a great approach, and one that we stand behind in terms of a great way to go build this kind of experience. So if I was to try to put on one slide, what are the core things that we've done and we've been talking about? If you're a .NET developer over the last 10, 15 years, there's probably 3 things you've been wanting for a long time. The ability to compile to native to get the performance and characteristics of a native application. Open access, the ability for us to embrace and work in an open environment, taking contributions, those kinds of things. And the ability to take and use C# and .NET and target cross-device capabilities. And that's what we're working on, and that's what we're making progress towards. No? And that's why when I started out, I felt good about saying this is an amazing time to be a .NET developer. The opportunities are endless. They're right there in front of us. We can do everything we need to, everything we want to, right from our awesome Visual Studio, C# and .NET environment. I mentioned there are lots of additional content this week. The team has got a number of different sessions sort of drilling into these at the next level. So Scott and Scott were yesterday, but go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. Dustin and Madge will be digging into the .NET compiler platform, both from the side of looking at how we're thinking about the language as it evolves, and show you some ideas of things that we're thinking about for the next versions of the C# and Visual Basic language, as well as ideas and experiences that we're looking at for how to leverage the knowledge of that compiler API platform, or the compiler platform's API set, to go and build richer experiences or allow you to build your own custom experiences. Of course, Miguel later today talking about how to go and leverage your C# and .NET skills to build those native iOS and Android apps. If you are still thinking about, okay, which of these cross-device approaches should I take? How do I think more about just native versus HTML, JavaScript for the web-based versus something like Xamarin? David Carmona is doing a talk this week as well to try to help go to the next level of those kinds of things. And then there's lots of other sessions related to .NET. I just tried to highlight a few that the team is doing. On the left, a bunch of resource links. The coolest thing about everything we talked about today is that it is all available right now for you to go out and start working with. Some of it in its first general availability form, so you can put it in production. Some of it in its first or second or third public preview form, so you still can get in, get your hands dirty with it, and interact with it and help us understand what you're looking for and looking to get out of it, and provide that feedback back into the team. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you. Please provide feedback. You were an amazing audience, so when I rate you, I will rate you very highly. Just saying. And with that, I think we have a couple minutes, so if we probably have time for 1 or 2 questions if folks have some questions they'd like to ask. Otherwise, I'll stick around, kind of around the side, and we can talk later as well. So if you have a question, just run to the mic and, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question about the .NET Native. Normally, IL runs in the CLR. .NET Native, is it outside the CLR, and do you lose some of the goodness that you get with the CLR, like code-based security, code access security, and that kind of stuff?
So the question was, normally the IL is running in the CLR, it's running in that kind of environment that gets capabilities there. Are we losing that with the .NET Native? Now, we still have things like garbage collection and those kinds of things are still happening for your app. You're still writing a .NET app. It's just we've gone and optimized the runtime to be as small and focused as it can for the device you're running on, right? So things like garbage collection are a core part of that runtime experience, and so that's something that stays. But a lot of the other overhead that would be found on a device is now gone away because we just compile that to native code and statically link it. Other questions? Yeah. Are we done? Apparently we're done.